Oh, God. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to be putting the shorty antenna on the VR4. I'm going to take out the stock antenna. It works. It goes up and down, but man, when it's at full extension, it looks like an RC car, and I don't want that look for my car anymore. So this is the one I bought off of Amazon. It was $43.93 shipped to my house. This is just a universal shorty antenna off of Amazon. Here's the little part number. I've actually used the same exact one on an NSX, and it looked great. And you can, once the base is on there, you can actually take the mast off of it, if you need to, if you're putting a car cover or something like that, whatever. It just screws on and off. Shouldn't be too difficult to do on this car. So I'm gonna get to it, get this thing in. I'll show you what it looks like. What I did with the stock one, just, kind of running around town was, I turned the radio on, I let it come up here, and then I actually got out of the car, ran over here and unplugged the wires from the motor so it would stop about, halfway up, because when this thing's full extended, it's like, I don't know, it's way up here somewhere, and it's just, it looks goofy to me. I know that was cool back in the day, but not so much anymore. So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing removed. And to get that thing out, we're going to have to lift this up, take out a couple trays, take out some of the plastic pieces in here. This whole unit lives right here, and it's only held on by a couple nuts. It's actually not difficult to take out. It's more tedious taking all this plastic apart than it is to actually get this unit out. Just take this panel off. It'll actually make your life a whole lot easier. You don't need to fully remove this panel. You can just bend it back out of the way, because that's all you need to get to right there. And everything that I took out was literally just like little Phillips head screws. So all you need is a Phillips head screwdriver. All right, motor's plugged in. Mine was already loose, but if yours is not, just find a screwdriver or something you can stick between here and just kind of twist it off. It's just a rubber gasket underneath. 10 millimeter. You're also going to have a ground wire that has just a Phillips head on it. This is just a drain hose. It's literally just a hose that goes on the bottom, pulls right off. In case any water gets in here, it will drain right out through the bottom here. Make sure you just unplug this right here, and your whole assembly will come free. Now, most of the time when these things break and they don't function properly, it's because of this stuff. This is like just a plastic, it's kind of got little gear teeth on it, and mine's broken in 3 pieces, but basically what it does is it wraps around here, and the motor will grab a hold of it and twist it so that this pushes up or pulls back down. Now I took all the broken pieces out of mine, and my antenna actually does go up and down, but what's happening is the motor is continuing to run, so it's I guess skipping on these teeth, or it thinks it's not all the way in the up or down position, so it continues to try to run. I'm just going to eliminate it completely, and that's why I'm going to put the shorty on there. So I was thinking ahead, and I kind of figured I'd get in this situation. So what's going to happen is this nut is going to come from underneath, but I don't think it's going to be quite big enough to capture the body on the inside here to really hold it. So I may have to come up with kind of a little bracket that goes across here and drill a hole in it so I can put it underneath this. That way when I put this nut back on, it actually has something to grab onto underneath and suck this down to the body. Well, because this is aftermarket, not specifically made for this car, I had to get a little creative, but actually not as creative as I originally thought I'd have to be. So this is the nut that comes on the bottom of the antenna. All I did was I bent these little tabs down so that they're flat now, and when I put it up from the bottom, it's actually going to, it'll fit and it'll actually hold in place because it's just bigger than the hole. So I don't have to worry about fabbing up another bracket or anything like that. Like, this will work, and it'll still allow the wire to come through this area. Well, there it is installed. It took a little bit of rethinking. What I ended up doing was just using a short 7/8 socket, pulling the wires back, and then putting the nut on the way that it was intended with that little groove, so that instead of the wires coming through the nut, they just bent back and there's a little indentation that it kind of rides in. I put a long extension on the 7/8 socket and then fed it up in there until I felt it, and it tightened down just fine and everything's sealed up. So these are your 2 wires come through. One is your antenna. This is just a power wire. It's like a, I believe it's a booster wire to find, I don't know, HD stations or something. You can plug this into power if you want. This is the stock harness that was plugged into the other one. And after doing some testing, my red wire is a constant hot. This blue wire right here is a keyed power, and when the radio is on. So if you're gonna do it, that's probably the one to do it to, is when your radio is actually powered on. It's sending power to this blue and gray, has like blue and silver, blue and gray little stripes or something on it. You can just do what I'm gonna do and just let the antenna do its thing, and I don't necessarily need that. I've been in here tearing all this apart to put the shorty antenna in here, but this is what you need to remove to get to your fuel pump. And I'm going to go ahead and do a fuel pump and fuel filter on this car just as a preventative measure. So this little flap right here will come out and give you access to the top of the fuel pump. A little dirty inside, but it's not corroded or anything like that, so that's really good. Looks like I just need to disconnect this wire, pull this off right here, and then this whole thing should be able to pull these nuts off and lift this thing up and out of the way. Unfortunately, my car does not want to cooperate. This fitting here will not come off. I don't know what else. I've soaked it. Line wrenches, regular wrenches, vice grips. I mean, all it's doing is rounding it now. So the next thing I can think of is basically just cutting this. This is just a tube that goes down, and it's a pickup tube. That's all it is. If I can cut this, get this out of the way, I can work on figuring out how to grind this. I don't know. Somehow I'll get it out of here. Then I can figure out a new tube or fitting or something up here at the top. I can get some AN fittings or something and connect it again. But at this point, I don't have any other options, because this is clearly, that's not going to come off. And I don't know why the heck it's in there so tight. If somebody took it apart at one point and just cranked on it when they put it back together, who knows? All right, I have some explaining to do. Now, this new fuel pump that I got, this import direct, got it from O'Reilly's. There is part number. It's going to work, but if you notice, it is much smaller than the original one that was in here. This is a Denso. Now, the trick to this is, once you get your wires spliced in, that's easy. You got your positive and negative, just clip the ends, and then they give you these little connectors and you connect the wires. Simple. The tricky part is this piece right here that went on the bottom of this one needs to be relocated. So I had to add this little bolt right here to push it up and hold it in place, and then add these nuts, one on top, two on the bottom, and I cranked them down so that this doesn't move. And the idea is you're taking it from down here, you're closing this gap and putting pressure, which pushes the pump up into the tube and holds it up in there. I bent this just ever so slightly just so I could get this to line up, because it doesn't exactly line up. Because when this is in its stock position, this piece right here is actually on the outside and it slides up underneath this tab. So I just relocated it to the inside and, you know, I made it work. All right, here's my setup back in. Now, this actually came with the fuel pump, and it's intended to go inside, you know, if your fuel pump needs to be extended. But the way this setup is, you have an O-ring at the bottom of the tube, so you actually have to push the pump piece in that so it seals in that O-ring. So you can't really use this. But it worked out in my case, because I had to cut this. This thing still, even after it was cut, I messed with this trying to get this off, and it is just, it's not coming off. So this is what I came up with. Everything is tight. I should be just fine. I mean, it's fuel. There's a little bit of pressure, but, you know, not a ton. We're gonna fire it up and see what happens. So learn from my mistakes, boys and girls. When you install a fuel pump, you need to make sure that you take that little tiny cap off the bottom of the pump. Because if you don't, you will install it, hypothetically, in your car, and then you'll crank and it's not gonna start, and then you'll think, I'll spray some quick start in there just to help it along, and it fires for a second, runs out of quick start, but it's still not pulling fuel, and you just can't figure it out, and then you'll have to pull everything back apart. And that's exactly what I just did, because my dumbass left that tiny cap on the bottom of the fuel pump so it couldn't suck fuel. All right, here we go. Let's see. It should crank a couple times and then fire. Let's see. I have fuel pump. Come on, baby. Ha 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 ha! Success! That door thing is annoying. There we go. All right. Yay! I have new fuel pump. So there's the finished product. That's what it looks like once it's back in. You can see I just ran a hose between these, between this hard line. Once it was cut, I cleaned everything up, filed it down, cleaned all the little shavings and stuff out so it's not in my system. And you know what? It works. It holds pressure, it holds fuel, car starts. So we're rocking it just like that. There we go. All completed, everything is back together. Now, when you do a fuel pump on your car, it is always good practice to do the fuel filter as well. I bought one. It's not in this video because I'm gonna just probably do it tomorrow or something. The fuel filter in this car, you have to remove the battery tray, and the windshield wiper reservoir and all that, because it's tucked up against the firewall way back down in there, and you can't get to it unless you remove all this stuff. I don't really feel like doing that right now because it's, even though it's not 111 today, it's still pretty warm. It's probably like high 90s, and that fuel pump just kind of kicked my butt. Yes, this is a pickle beer. Why am I drinking a pickle beer? Because I failed with the fuel pump. Because my dumb ass left that tiny little cover on the bottom of the fuel pump, and I went and installed the fuel pump in the car. I tried to crank the car over. That's a fail. Thankfully, this is the only pickle beer I have here at the house. My wife bought this for me a while back because she has all the faith in the world that I'm going to do everything right. And usually I do. The reason I don't have pickle beer and do all this tradition that the Zero to Awesome guys do is because, well, I don't fail, right? So hopefully those guys can appreciate the fact that I cracked open a sour pickle beer. Definitely one of the worst ones. I mean, they're all bad, but that's definitely one of the worst ones. On the bright side, it was cold. It wasn't sitting out in the sun, so that's a plus. If you watch their channel, you totally get the meaning behind all of this. It's a cool little tradition that they do when they fail. It's pretty funny. I've had to drink pickle beer when I was over helping them because we didn't get it right with the Sea-Doo carbs. This isn't going to become a thing. This is probably just a one-time deal just because of the fact that there was one sitting in the fridge and I felt bad that I screwed that up. So I took a sip, but I definitely got to pour some out for the homies, right? So let's pour some out for the homies. I think the homies need more. Let's just go ahead and give them as much as we can. Thanks for watching. Stay hungry, stay foolish. What? The homies are thirsty.